At 19 years old, I was living off FAFSA money, selling drugs, and had almost died after wrecking my second car. Behind the scenes, I was battling addiction, poverty, and the worst enemy of all, myself. Fast forward to today, and I've helped over 100 business owners scale and make millions of dollars, and have become a seven-figure earner myself. My journey from growing up in bars with my parents to becoming a respected business coach was not a linear journey, but it taught me everything I needed to know about transformation. My name is Brendan Whiting, and this is how a college dropout who was completely lost became a top dog in the sales industry. So I grew up in a super small town, Carbondale, Illinois. I grew up in kind of a toxic household. You know, I'm moving around a lot as a kid. My parents divorced before I was like 5 years old. So I was bouncing around a lot. And, you know, as someone who's like super young and all you've ever grown up around is like, you know, manipulation and you're always having to kind of look out for your own back, like you're pretty introverted. You know, one thing I definitely lacked as a kid was like a mentor, somebody I could look up to, right? So I didn't really have anything and no one was speaking positive words into me. You know, I didn't want to play sports. I didn't really have any hobbies. So I kind of just like, you know, stuck to myself. You know, one of the things that I used to do a lot with my family members was, you know, they'd go to bars and they'd kind of just like leave me. Like I'd, you know, go into these bars under 10 years old, playing the damn video games, shooting some pool as a young kid. And, you know, it's funny, like you come up and you think that these things are like super normal, but you start to realize over time, like, hey, this is like kind of weird, right? I was definitely the only kid in those bars. As a kid who had no guidance, no passion or anything like that, kind of no really identity as a kid. 4th, 5th grade, I picked up a basketball and I was like, dude, this is my escape. The next 3-4 years, I went super hard down that path. From junior high and I was going into high school. That was a pivotal time in both my parents' life. You know, my dad was going to rehab, he was moving out of state. My mom had just remarried, and I'm a young kid that has really no identity besides I play basketball. And for me, that was gonna be my way. I was like, dude, I'm gonna go to the NBA. Basketball tryouts my freshman year in high school. You know, I show up and I'm like, dude, this is gonna be cool. I'm gonna crush it. And I get my freaking ass kicked as a freshman in high school because I'm 5'3" and 120 pounds. I remember I went home that day and I was just defeated. I was like, dude, this is my identity. Like, this is what I do. So that taught me a lesson right there that I, you know, thank basketball for even to this day, is getting competitive. And luckily, you know, over the next couple years, that's when life really started to change for me. That's when, for the first time ever, I experienced what it was like to feel confident. My junior and senior year was when I really turned it on. That's when I became a freaking savage in sports. You know, I win 3-point contests. I become an all-star player, score 1,000+ points over those next 2 years in my high school career, and everything's looking cool. Now, there's one part of this where it started to get crazy. I get this job at a McDonald's that's 45 minutes away from where I lived. 1, because that's the only McDonald's that would hire me. 2, because I didn't want people to see me working at McDonald's flipping burgers when I'm a high school superstar basketball player. I'm like, dude, I'm 16. I'm a good looking kid. I'm getting these freaking grease pops and this grill sucks. And I'm like, dude, this is terrible. And then I'm getting my paycheck and it's $500 after taxes, $272. And I'm like, this isn't no way to live. I'm at the job one day, a couple months in, I get popped with the grease. I get a little, you know, lecture from my manager that I'm not cooking the burgers fast enough. And I remember I said, hey, I'm gonna go take a quick 15-minute break in my car. And I hopped in that car and then just went on with my life. Picked up a good amount of weed for a 16-year-old to pick up. And immediately I was in business and I started slinging it. If I'm not playing basketball, I'm out causing trouble. And that's kind of just how my life was going at that point. Where I come from, and this is what you gotta understand about being from a small town, there is no thinking about the future. You're born here, you die here, you live in the same house, same financial situation, same health your entire life. So I didn't think about that. I was like, dude, if I can get to the end of my life and stay out of jail, then I'm successful. That summer after I graduated high school, it spiraled out of control. I started throwing house parties and I started selling harder drugs, but it went from every other weekend to every weekend to every weekday. even before class. You know, I'm hitting lines and I'm smoking weed and I'm drinking. I got beer in my dorm room. I'm going to college class, I'm flunking, I'm getting pressured from my professors. Hey, you're not gonna be able to play basketball. I'm doing 2-3 practices a day while trying to maintain a drug addiction and sell drugs. I remember I go, you know what, this is too much. I hopped in my car one day and I drove off. I didn't realize it at the time, but I just lost my identity. Do I matter? Do I make an impact? Do I have any skills? And I started to realize, like, I'm a loser. It was a time in my life where I said, fuck it, I don't care. So the next 3 years, I went on a freaking warpath where I was doing drugs every single day, you know, smoking weed, selling weed, doing cocaine, selling cocaine, drinking every single day, dozens of tickets with the court system, ranging from speeding tickets to drinking tickets. And I just couldn't be helped. Even my old high school basketball coach reached out to me one time and he's like, are you okay? How are you doing? I was like, my life sucks, but it's cool. You know, and I remember it was a really tough conversation for him. I remember all these people started giving up on me one by one. At that time, even though I was going through a hard time, he said, hey, I believe in you. Like, a lot of people don't believe in you, but I think you're a really good kid and I think you're gonna pull out of it. And I think God's got your back. You know, and that was a really powerful moment for me. But I got to the point where I was just so depressed. You know, I saw a picture in my phone. It was me when I was playing basketball. And I saw how fired up I looked, how young I looked, how motivated I was. You know, it's funny, like, God doesn't make decisions for you. God puts you in scenarios, and then you get to make the decision. You have to live with the choices. So I just gotten arrested. My grandparents bailed me out. I stay at their house. The next day, she's like, hey, we're gonna go to the bookstore. You wanna come with us? And I'm like, sure, like, you know, let's do it. She's like, hey, you pick any book, I'll buy it for you. And I pick up a book and it's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the biggest shift I had in my life at that moment was, this isn't the end. Like, I've been thinking that this depression I'm in, you know, these problems I'm facing, this is the end of my journey. And all I had to do is flip the switch and say, this is the beginning. This is the beginning of a new identity, of a new path that I'm gonna go down. I envisioned, just for a second, what it would feel like if I was able to pay off my court debt, pay back everybody that I owed money to, get a job, get really successful, you know, build great relationships, build a family where people grow up differently than I did, and be able to give back. And I started crying, I started tearing up, and for the first time in my life, I wanted something. You know, I felt that hunger again to be great. What I had to build was the self-respect that I lost. So I worked all these 9-to-5 jobs and I was just trying to figure it out, but the whole time I was really focused on fitness because it was helping me build my self-respect. I'm now working at Finish Line, a shoe store in the mall. And my manager comes up to me and she goes, hey, Brennan, we're gonna write you up. You're not fired. If it happens again, you're done. I call my buddy and I'm like, dude, this sucks. Like, I'm working at Finish Line. I think they're gonna fire me. You know, and he comes over and we have a beer and we're like just sitting there talking. And he's like, dude, I just started selling cars. And, you know, I think it might be a good job for you. If you can put in 60, 80 hours a week, dude, this guy will hire you. Tonight, we're actually celebrating one of the guys' birthdays at the bar. You could come there, you could meet him. And that was a night that forever changed my life. I go into the bar, sit down, start talking to the manager. I'm telling him all these personal things. I'm telling him ahead of time, hey, listen, man, you know, I don't have it all figured out. I owe money to the court system. I have terrible credit. I'm about to get fired from Finish Line in the mall. The manager, he takes a drink of his drink and he looks at me and he goes, do you have a driver's license? And I said, yeah. He's like, you're hired. Come in Monday. And that started a journey that I'll never forget. A couple weeks after I started selling cars was actually when the most important thing that ever happened to me happened. And that was when I met my fiance, Gia. Life's starting to kind of look good for me, right? Like, I get hired at a car dealership. I've never made $3,000 consistently in a month in my entire life at that point. So I'm like, this is dope. I meet a girl that for the first time after all these crazy relationships and toxic family members and friends and family I grew up with, me and her have a great relationship. We're broke, but we're figuring it out. Like, we're enjoying life together. You know, 6 months goes by and now we're in December 2020. And I still didn't know how to sell. I didn't have any skills. I had no confidence. And I'd sold like 3 or 4 cars. Thinking that, you know, I don't even know how much I'm making. The dealership I'm at is super sketchy. They definitely don't tell their employees how much they pay them when they sell cars because then they can't manipulate the pay and stuff like that. So I'm thinking like, hey, if I sell 4 cars, like, I don't know how paying and getting paid in the car business works. Maybe I made a couple $1,000. Maybe I made 10 grand. I don't know. Now it's, November's over and we get our checks for the month, and I got a check for $800. I remember I was like, well, this isn't going to work because this isn't going to cover my bills, and me and Gia are going to be in trouble. And then the friend of Gia that we shared an apartment with, one day we get home, me and Gia, we get home from going out to dinner, and we get back and all of her stuff is gone. Gia calls her and she's like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you leaving? And she's like, I don't like that boyfriend of yours. Good luck with him. He's a freaking loser. And I'll never forget like the gut punch that gave me, because at the time she was right. I was making $800, court debt, nothing promising about my future. And I remember like that was a day for me. Me and Gia are 6 months in. I've never had any parent, family member, anybody I can count on that said, I believe in you. And she goes, we're gonna figure this out. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And then literally not even a week later, series of crazy events. I go to work, my sales manager, he pulls me in the office one day. I come into the office and he's like, hey kid, get in here. He goes, you're not gonna make it. I don't think sales is for you. And we're gonna put a quote on you this month where if you don't sell at least 8 cars this month, you're fired. And I called Gia and I'm like, listen to what my manager said to me. I said, I should just quit. Like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe sales isn't my thing, and I should just move on and go get a job at this supplement store. And Gia again goes, you can't let him win. Like, you have to come back. You have to prove him wrong. We can't do that. That's not an option. I get home, get behind a laptop, and I'm like, how to sell more cars, thinking that it might give me a couple tips and tricks. I see a YouTube thumbnail of a guy named Andy Elliott, and I'm like, huh. And I look at the title and it says, how to sell more cars in the next 30 days. And I'm like, this is getting a little weird. Like, I got 30 days to sell more cars. This video is exactly what to do. Let me investigate this a little bit. And that night became a YouTube marathon where I studied dozens of Andy Elliott's videos, because for the first time in my life, I subconsciously, without even realizing it, identified a mentor. This guy had the answers that I needed. So I studied him and I watched all of his videos. Every single night I would log into YouTube and I would lock myself in a room and just take notes, just like he said, pen and piece of paper. I go out, I sell the most cars in the dealership, and they hand out paychecks again. And I'm like, I still have no idea what I'm getting paid. So I'm like, fingers crossed, I hope that those 20 something cars that I sold paid me at least a couple $1,000. And they hand me my check and they're like, good job this month, Brendan, you did good. And I'm driving home that night and I called Gia and I'm like, guess what? I just made $10,000 fucking dollars. I see that like there might be something inside this opportunity. So a couple things happened. Number one, I decided no more drinking, no more partying. And then also I said, it's time to step up. I need something to help me go to the next level. Like, I feel like I'm kind of stuck. So I remember I reached out to Andy, and I texted the number that he put on his YouTube videos. And I said, hey, I love your videos. I'm looking for help. I want to level up in car sales. What can you do? Later that night, I get a phone call. He goes, listen, if you're serious about selling cars, which I know you are, I'm going to charge you a couple $1,000. I'm going to coach you, teach you. You're going to come to one of my events coming up in the fall of this year, and we're going to go to the next level. I carelessly spend money on alcohol, gambling, booze, and entertainment. Let me put a couple $1,000 into myself and start to see what happens. And from then on was when it got crazy. I left that dealership I was at. I doubled my income. Me and Gia, my fiance, we're in an amazing relationship. Our relationship has grown, and physically I'm getting stronger and better every single day. I went from a young guy who had no future, giving up on myself, to now making a couple $100,000 a year. My life now is forever changed. This is like a whole new world for me. So I'm so grateful for Andy for opening my eyes. I waited till everybody left the event. It was, we used to do these events on Sunday nights. It was 5, 6 o'clock, everybody's clearing out of the room. Me and Gia are standing there in his office. The VP goes and tells Andy, he's like, hey man, some kid wants to talk to you. And I pour my heart out to him. I start crying. I start telling him like, dude, like I had no mentor. I was lost. And having you to look up to and model has changed everything for me. And I'll forever be grateful for you. I didn't know at that time that he was looking at me and potentially thinking, this guy believes, this guy could be a great fit. He's just taking it all in and he's like, I'm super appreciative. And he DM'd me a couple months later and he goes, hey man, you and Gia ever thought about moving to Arizona? Like, dude, like we would love to. And I remember I would talk to Gia and I'd be like, there's no way Andy wants me to work for him because I'm not worth that opportunity. Gia always believed in me. Like, that's the thing. I thought, because again, my biggest struggle has always been up until the past 2 years, really, when I really broke through, they're like, I'm not worth it. And that's what happens when you come from the type of background I come from. You struggle from doubt, poverty, toxic mindsets. March 2022, we fly out here. Andy tells me to wait, the whole event. He's got me waiting. He's like, hey, whenever we get done here, like, let's talk. And finally, he comes up to me at the second day of the event and he goes, hey, come to my office tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, I got a flight that leaves at 8 a.m., but come by, got a flight, missed that, end up staying here for 2-3 hours talking to Andy, me and Gia. And basically, he explains to me the vision. I want you to come move to the Elliott Group. You can be a top guy. You have it in you. I know you believe. If you want this opportunity, you let me know. But it's here for you as long as you don't sit on it too long. You got to make a decision. I go into my dealership the very next day and I tell my manager, I'm like, hey man, look, I love working here, but this will be my last day. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He's like, dude, what are you talking about? But I believed in it. Gia had to finish school, so she stayed back for a couple months. I lived out here by myself. I got an apartment. There was no furniture in it. I slept on an air mattress. I had saved some money in the car business, but after paying taxes, spending $25,000 to move out here and paying off all my debt that I owed, I didn't have any money. I didn't have a penny to my name, but I fucking believed and I knew I was going to make it. And I came in my first month and became one of the top performers. I started thinking bigger, scaled, never looked back. And from that day forward, I've just blazed a path that I never even thought would be my life. I went from mid-pack to being a top producer. 2024, I became the #1 sales producer inside the Elliott Group. Have had multiple 6-figure months in commissions. And it's all because of the mindset shifts that I had. And honestly, a lot of people ask me, they're like, how do you feel like your background impacted you? I'm like, dude, I'm so grateful that everything that I went through happened, because if it hadn't, I wouldn't be who I was today. I had this identity that was holding me back, and I had to, through grit, hustle, determination, faith, and sacrifice and development, I turned myself into a new person. I gave myself a new identity. They say you're the most qualified to help the person that you used to be. So I used to be a car salesman and I transformed my life. So I started helping other car salesmen. I started coaching people up. And a couple people that I point to as case studies for guys that are in the car business that want to level up is one of my guys named Cullen Dunn. Cullen Dunn, I talked to him at the beginning of 2024. And he was literally on his first month in the car business, had never sold cars a day in his life. We hopped on a call. We had a powerful call. It was an hour long. He joins our program, and in 1 year, in his first full year selling cars, he makes $120,000. I thought to myself, what if this formula worked for any person that wanted to get into the coaching space? What if I could take a coach from 0 to 10, 20, 50, $100,000 a month? So I studied it. Take Ajay, for example. Ajay's another client of mine. Ajay flies out, me and him sit down, we do a one-on-one for a couple hours. I whiteboard out some things. I give him some strategies. I help him brainstorm the offer, the marketing strategies, the sales strategies. And Ajay scaled from $3,000 a month to $20,000 every single month. And this month, as we speak, March 16th, 2025, he's on track to do $100,000 this month. The Elliott Group helps anybody who's in sales. As we wrap up this video, one thing I want to throw out there for you guys, if you're watching this, if you're a salesperson or a business owner that wants to level up and you want my guidance, you want my help, happy to help. If you're a coach or consultant out there that wants to know the strategies on how I'm helping coaches scale from 0 to $500,000 plus a month and beyond, we have a 9-figure business at the Elliott Group, and I'm giving away the play. I know the play, I know the strategies you need, and I love helping great people reach the next level. There's a link at the bottom of the video in the description where you can actually book a call on my calendar. I'm looking to help more people than I ever have, and I want to take a bunch of coaches to the next level, and I want to help any salesperson or business owner that wants to level up. So if that is you enjoyed this video, let's not end here. Let's make this the freaking beginning, and let's crush 2025. You guys heard my story, and maybe you can relate to that. Maybe that was you. Maybe that is you, and you want to go to the next level. Freaking here to help. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's kick some ass.